Hey everybody, you're listening to New Soundwave week, hell, I don't know, like 4 or 5-ish of the new format. Video games galore, hooray! With me this week, Weebum, Rob Springer, XV, JD, and the great Brian Kilby, host of RFC. This week, it's kind of like a Comic-Con hangover. There's not a whole lot of news this week. But we'll touch on a couple things. Then JD has this knockdown, drag-out initial review, could change down the road, of Starcraft II. And then we're going to get into a little talk about DC Online and all that implies. So first, something that's kind of near and dear, at least to me and Kilby, Capcom versus Tekken. We heard about this last week, and now we have screenshots. And Brian... it kind of looks basically like an expansion pack of Super Street Fighter 4, which I guess is what we kind of expected.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's
it's
Tekken characters in the Street Fighter engine, but I'm amazed that they've managed to retain the fighting styles. I mean, obviously they weren't going to change it, but I'm amazed how well they seem to have carried over just from that initial footage to Street Fighter. It's not that the gameplay mechanics of the two games are so disparate that it was impossible, but Street Fighter relies more on the 2D plane than Tekken does. Tekken does a little bit more with that third dimension than Street Fighter does, but nothing to the extent of, say, something like Soul Calibur, which is which is 8-way direction. 8-way play is the reason to play Soul Calibur.
Pretty badass.
Yeah, it is.
It is, and it's actually surprising how seamless even the characters look. I mean, they did a really good job of taking the Tekken character models and giving them the Street Fighter treatment. I mean, they're all we've seen so far is Kazuya and Nina, I believe, and they're the typically Street Fighter 4 kind of beefy versions of themselves. Everybody in Street Fighter 4 is fairly roided out, and they're no exception. But they look really good. It looks like they're going to fit in pretty well. And you're right, Tekken, for all the 3D-ness of a 2D fighter than some of the other 3D fighters out there, for better or worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's 3D in the sense that it operates with 3D graphics, but it's virtually as 2D as Street Fighter 4 is. But just a little bit more because of the way characters can like do rolls and escapes and things, but mostly 3D, 2D.
Right. Yeah, a sidestep here and a sidestep there does not like a 3D game make.
Exactly.
So, and you're right, Soul Calibur, much more of a pure, or I guess much more indicative of what a 3D fighter is. Moving on to Metroid Other M. Its trailer came out. We had this week was light on news, but kind of heavy on trailers. Actually, trailers kind of creep into most of the content on this week's show. But anyway, Metroid Other M. The trailer's out. It is very Japanese and very story heavy. So if you don't speak Japanese, you're going to have to like kind of just watch and follow along a little bit. It is very awesome because it's platformer-tastic. And it looks really good, all things considered, especially because it's like pushing the Wii to do as much as it can. Any thoughts on what we've seen from Other M?
I didn't see it, but the fact that the game is being produced by Team Ninja.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, where the last 3 games, console games, have been done by Retro Studios, which are they out of Texas?
They're out of Texas, yeah.
Yes, they are.
I had like huge fears before Metroid Prime came out, and really wasn't necessarily alleviated because I'm not a huge fan of the Metroid Prime series. It's not bad, just doesn't scream Metroid to me. The high point of the series is obviously Super Metroid on the SNES, but I just don't expect a lot out of this.
I just hope Metroid Other M is not as damn hard as Ninja Gaiden.
Oh, God.
Because those games are ridiculous. At least maybe have...
Make sure you swing the remote exactly the right way. None of this half-ass waving stuff.
Or you have to
exactly at the right
angle.
time.
Yeah.
It's going to be like that.
I hope.
you would think, especially like those past games, like Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden is an example of how in the world did they think that level of difficulty was good? Because it's one of those few games where it's like infuriatingly difficult, and not even like in a fair way.
Did you guys ever play 2?
On the Game Boy, yeah.
Oh, well, because the new Ninja Gaiden 2.
No, the 360. Well, it's not an exclusive now. Sony is getting a version of it.
Oh,
yeah,
that's like 3 years too late. But anyway, even their easy or normal setting is really damn hard. And just like John was saying, it's infuriating. It's like, how did that just happen? It's really annoying. But
just happened.
Yeah.
Sorry, Talladega Nights. It's like the best movie ever.
It just annoys me to no end. And
yeah, actually, there's a good question just to veer off real quick. Okay, so and I'm looking at you, Brian, as a very experienced gamer, and Rob too. But first, you, Brian. Okay, so what's the hardest game you've ever played?
Jeez, it's a sliding scale. As a kid, games that are now considered ridiculously hard, like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, I didn't have that much problem with. But now, just anything infuriates me, because I don't have the patience that I did as a kid. So, Ninja Gaiden 2 is up. Ninja Gaiden 1 on the Xbox is up there.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
No, that game's easy. The one for the NES. For the NES?
Yeah.
It's not. No, that game's easy.
The original Ninja Gaiden, it pissed me off.
Toward the end, it got harder. It was almost like we mentioned this before. Half-Life 1. That's totally playable till you get to the last level, then becomes just ridiculously hard. And then there are games that are just hard to play because they suck so bad, like China Warrior for the TurboGrafx 16. Like, oh my god, this is so monotonous and ugly. Why am I playing this?
What was that?
It's this game with super huge sprites that I had on the TG16, where you're basically this Bruce Lee type fighting druids over and over and over and over and over and over.
Nice.
It goes on forever.
So what you're saying is
it's just incredibly monotonous. But as an adult, it would have to be Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox.
And it's funny that you say that, because I wonder like how much of it is us just getting old and like crotchety in our gaming. Like we don't have time for this.
I finished Mega Man 3 in one setting. Not that it's hard, but I did it in one setting. Most people consider this game like really difficult. Now, if I'd had Mega Man 9 as a kid, I would have finished it. Now I play like for 3 levels, and I'm like, screw this, I don't have time for this.
although don't you believe that once they added the ability to that little battery or little memory chip in there for you to save where you last ended your game, they made these games significantly harder because they could, right? So you wouldn't have to sit there for 6 or 7 hours or however long, and to beat the game, you could come back to it at another time.
I don't know if that was intentional, but I would definitely say that they made the games longer, if not harder, because I don't know many people other than me who's like sat down and played through the original Legend of Zelda in one sitting. I wouldn't sit down and try to play Legend of Zelda 3, on the SNES in one sitting, but I can't really think of any game that I would say was especially was harder because of the save capability. Typically, I think the games are harder that you have to sit through and play through on like a limited number of continues or no continues at all, and that makes games difficult. I don't know.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
I think your mileage may vary.
Yeah, true, very true.
I cannot sit in front of games for more than 3 hours at a time anymore.
I make
I know,
it.
sad.
I make it if I've played a game for 15 minutes straight, I'm doing.
That's
really
amazing
well.
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an accomplishment.
I have a ridiculously short attention span unless I'm working. If I'm working, I can sit through and forget whatever. But I just don't have a lot of time for recreation. It's odd.
You are a strange man, Kilby.
I don't know.
Who wants to have fun for extended periods of time?
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And play when you're about to die.
Yeah.
All right, so hey, with our next story, all I can say is, doesn't 12 years just fly by? So after 12 years, yes, this week, Starcraft II was released, and people are saying it's going to be popular. Analysts are expecting over 7 million copies and $350 million in sales just this year on Starcraft II, and one of those 7 million copies went to our very own JD, and he is going to give us some thoughts on the game.
I just want to say that I think this game will flop.
Well,
I'm
excellent
kidding.
point, sir. It depends on what you mean by flop, and I'll touch on, I think, maybe some of the things that you're hearing or seeing. So as John said, it's been 12 years since the original StarCraft came out. StarCraft was it was really wildly popular, of course, when it initially came out, and then since that time waned, I guess, in the U.S., but it did not lose its popularity overseas. So the Korean market has been huge. We're not all aware of this in the U.S. Only those of us that are gamers are, I guess, and probably people listening to this podcast. But there is something called Star League in Korea, and they actually play StarCraft professionally. Like, it is what they do for their job. They make tons of money doing it. And they're incredible. But that's beside the point. Anyway, it's big over there. So Blizzard, of course, wanted to update the game. They wanted to bring it back out, and that's what they've done. The release, of course, was Tuesday. There was the midnight release was Tuesday, and then everybody picked theirs up yesterday. I got the collector's edition because I'm that kind of guy. You have to understand that when I was in college, there was no such thing as MMOs. Well, there were, but I wasn't playing them. This was what I played. So I'm a huge fan of StarCraft. The collector's edition, I'd say it's worth it, but that's because I used free money from Reward Zone points from Best Buy to buy it. But there's a lot of stuff that's in this. There's a collection of the art. Of course, it includes the game. There's a DVD-ROM of more art and behind-the-scenes images. One of the coolest things that came with is a 2 gig thumb drive, and I'll try to show this to the camera. And if you're not watching this on video, why?
SOL.
Wah wah.
But you can check these out online. So this is the 2 gig thumb drive that came with it. It is a replica of Raynor, who's one of the characters in the game, a replica of his dog tags, and it's pretty cool.
It does sound cool.
So it's, there you go, thumb drive. It actually comes with the complete version of the original StarCraft. So if you buy the collector's edition, you probably already have the original game, but if you don't, hey, there you go. You've got a copy of it now. It also came with one other thing that I thought was cool, which was an issue 0 for the StarCraft comic book, written by Simon Furman. So,
Ooh.
yeah, I know. I was shocked. I did not know that. I knew it was coming with a comic book, but I was not aware that it was written by Simon Furman. So, who knew? Anyway, and also if you play, there's a couple of in-game exclusives for StarCraft II that you get. Also, if you play World of Warcraft, you get an in-game exclusive pet, which is awesome because it's it's a very miniature version of one of the in-game mechanics called a Thor. It's a mech. And it is hilarious. It'll sit there and shoot. It's got guns on each of its arms. It'll sit there and shoot, and then it flies around and lands and shoots, and it's awesome. But the important thing is the game. I played through the first set of missions. Well, there's part 1, and then you get into the larger, expansive missions. So far, it's pretty good. It's classic StarCraft. It has a lot more options as far as the difficulty goes. It starts out all the way from easy and then has 4 levels going all the way up to brutal. And I've heard that brutal lives up to its name, but I haven't tried that yet. I played through easy because I wanted to try to get through as much of the game as I could. As far as controls, it is identical to the original StarCraft, which is good because, again, they're intending this game to be massively consumed in Korea, and as long as the gameplay is the same, it's going to be easier to port it over for the Star League to use. So that's part of their idea. And there's a lot of little behind-the-scenes tools that it's designed for that. There's viewer modes so that you can actually have like a spectator mode where you're able to watch the match as it goes on, and it tells you what players are building and things like that, which is really important if you've ever watched those games. If you hadn't, it's kind of interesting to watch one. They do American dubs. Now, the graphics, of course, are absolutely amazing, especially when you compare them to the original StarCraft. 12 years has gone by, so that's going to be big. Now, some of the detractors, some of the things that the reviews are saying right now, I can't necessarily disagree with, although I don't know that I agree with their point. Some of the critique that's coming out is that, well, they didn't update it as far as, the gameplay goes. Like, well, okay, yeah, but there's a reason they didn't do that. And also, it's an excellent game originally, so why would you mess with it? The big thing is that this game only comes with the Terran missions. So as far as the story mode goes, you can only play as Terrans. You're going to have to wait for the Zerg and then the Protoss expansion in order to be able to play their campaign and story modes. And they're not been very clear about how they're going to do that. Whether it's going to be just download content that'll be updated for free, whether you're going to have to pay for those expansion packs later and end up having to shell out more money, which is what people's concern is. So, yeah, I mean, I get that. So, and I'm not really sure why they went with that either. I mean, unless it's the idea to make more money, but that doesn't... I don't know. I don't know if they just weren't done with the story and they wanted to release the game, or... I don't know. There's not really a clean answer to that question.
Didn't they just want to shrink down their massive, already, 15-year development time or something? Plus, it's Activision, right? They want to just start milking more money from you.
Yeah.
Well, it's Blizzard, so yeah, I guess Blizzard Activision now, but yeah, Blizzard's not been one to try to necessarily milk a lot of money out of its player base. They typically have been pretty good.
They're not?
No, not really.
Seriously?
I mean,
Blizzard?
I don't think so. Because, well, typically they release a game and they try to release a quality game. And yeah, they'll have expansions, but they don't have the massive amounts of DLC and stuff that you'll see out of other games.
And they haven't been trying to acclaim it up. Like Acclaim. Formerly, like actual game company no longer, because they release nothing but crap and lots of it. Right.
Yeah, I mean, typically Blizzard's been pretty good about, the quality of the work that they put out. So the other big critique out of the game is that it does not support LAN play. So one of the high points of the original StarCraft is that you could play over LAN, right? You could network computers together and then play over that LAN. Well, you can't do that anymore. You have to log into Battle.net in order to...
Does people still do LAN stuff?
See, that's my question, too. Apparently, yes, but... I don't know of a lot of people that are playing LANs on current systems. I know a lot of people that will do LAN parties on systems that are 5 or 10 years old. Portable systems that they'll, carry into a gameplay set. But I don't know people that are doing that with current systems. Certainly not systems that would support this game.
From what I hear, though, the game doesn't require anything crazy in terms of hardware, so... Any reasonably new PC should be able to support it.
Well, 8 gig. It's 12 gigs of RAM for the hard drive. 2 gig processor. Well, that's RAMs.
Nothing is. I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
Astronomical.
No, I mean, 1 gig of RAM. You know, yeah. I mean, it's not.
But-
yeah, it's nothing crazy as far as
my
that.
computer 8 years had a gig of RAM.
But that's the part that always pisses me off about PC games, though. You have to, just because you have the specs does not mean that it'll actually play.
Well, but typically, I mean, even if it's at if it's at the low end, if it's at 1 gig, if it says 1 gig of RAM, 2 gig recommended, if you have the 2 to 3 gig, you're probably good. Now, again, that's all things being equal. I mean, you're typically going to have one of a couple of bits, and anything that's too low is going to drag it down. So if you have a really great video processor, okay memory, and a mediocre system processor, yeah, that's probably going to pull the gameplay down. So you can't just go by one set. It's you've got to have decent of all the individual bits. So I don't know. I don't understand the LAN thing because, and kind of like you're saying, Brian, though, I don't realize, one, I didn't realize a lot of people are playing over LAN. Two, the thing that I like is that it frees up the need for the DVD. You can install the software anywhere. You log into your BattleNet account, and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about having the access key, so that they know you're not like a duplicate or something. Which was what you had to do with the original.
You know what's a duplicate? These 2 chocolate animal crackers that I'm eating right here. They're duplicates, and they're delicious.
Very nice.
Man, that's the kind of insight that you only get on New Soundwave.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. All right, so JD, in the end, thumbs up, thumbs down so far.
So far, I mean, I like it. Like I said, one of the thing that I didn't mention is that as far as going through the story mode, it's not like when you play through the original StarCraft. A lot of it was here's how to play the game. That's not so much of that. There's a couple of tutorials that you can actually play if you want to get the gameplay feel. But one of the things that they're doing different is, well, of course, there's achievements because every game has to have achievements now. Apparently,
Darn you, Xbox 360
ruined us. So the other thing you can do is as you play through the story mode is semi-non-linear, so you can do different missions at different times, and when you do those, especially in the early game, it unlocks the ability to do different upgrades. So for example, if you do one mission where you're rescuing locals off of a particular planet, once you complete that opens up the laboratory between missions, and with that you can upgrade your items and then use that in the missions. So you're not necessarily as dependent on your tech tree, at least within the missions. You have different ways to augment your tech tree as you're playing through the game and playing through the story mode. Now, I haven't actually got to do the multiplayer yet, so maybe in a couple of weeks or next week when I actually get to do some of the multiplayer with it and head or 2v2, I can report back on that. But this is just, of course, just for the story mode. I haven't got to do anything more than that.
Okay,
but
excellent.
Good. I mean, I like it so far. I mean, yeah, duh, I'm gonna like it. So.
Fantastic, JD. Yeah, and if you have any further thoughts, by all means, do a follow-up report. So, this week, like every week, we like to do an extended kind of discussion at the back half of the show. And this week, hopefully everybody on the show, and I feel lots of geeks across the world, have seen the trailer that was released for DC Online, speaking of MMOs. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity this week to kind of talk about not just DC Online, but I guess the idea of an MMO that is established superheroes in an established comic universe. And if anybody's excited about this, what do people think of the trailer? Just, what do we think about this, guys?
Who plays MMOs anyway?
I do.
I won't say what I was about to just say then.
Oh.
I play World of Warcraft.
A family
I've
show.
played MMOs for years, so yeah. No, I guess, am I the sole? I take it I'm the sole MMO player here then.
You are probably the sole MMO player that I know.
In the world.
No, that's not true.
Outside of Korea.
That's
No, actually, I have lots of friends who I would consider normal people who MMO. They all have a little work account. I know literally 10 or 15 people like at work with WoW accounts.
Does this seem like the kind of thing that would bring in like a casual non-MMO person?
No, not at all.
You know,
I don't know about. Yeah, I don't think so either. I think maybe.
If Star Wars Galaxies didn't do it, this isn't going to do it.
What about Lego Universe?
No.
No. Okay.
Here's the trend with MMOs, right? And this is from having played MMOs for almost 10 years. Typically what happens is you have an established core of a player base. So World of Warcraft obviously has a huge player base. You know, whatever it is, they say a couple million or whatever they're at as far as their player base. A new MMO comes out, a certain percentage, 5, 10, 15%, will migrate for the trial period. Then most of those will come back. They may play for 2 to 3 months, and then the rest will come back. So typically, what the trend is whatever you spent the most money in or the most comfortable game that you feel in, you're going to stay within that market. So it's very hard within the MMO market to get market share. Now, that is going to depend on how they execute it. So EVE has done really well with taking a decent amount of market share from World of Warcraft. And they've done that a couple of different ways. One being that EVE exists in a single universe. So there's none of this multiple servers.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you don't have to figure out what server your friends are on. You can launch into that world and you're automatically in the same universe as anybody else that plays that game. And I think interface-wise, it's easy to use and all that. That's another big part of it. So you see a couple of games that are trying to break into the market right now, and they're based on properties. In MMO sphere. So Galaxies was a horrible failure. There's a couple of reasons for that. Star Trek Online, I think that's out, but I don't think that's doing very well. Matrix has already been shut down. That was a quick flash in the pan.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah,
a dismal failure.
That was really bad. I think, did it last a year? I don't know that it even lasted. It may have lasted 2 years.
I think it somehow made it through the first year, and then they just ripped it apart. They were like, "Nah, we're done." They just unplugged the whole thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
It just stands to common sense why something like Star Wars, Star Trek, and all that's not going to really do so well. It's because everyone wants to be Luke Skywalker, not Landy Daddy the Jedi guy, or no one cares about expanded universe. You know,
no one wants to. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's an excellent
character. No, I can't. Expanded universe. Yay.
That's an excellent point, because I mean the whole thing about playing an MMO is you have to have a decent group of people depending on what your mechanics are. So in like EVE Online, it's all about the interaction. It's one of the other reasons that game works well, because you don't really have, I mean, you kind of do tanks, healers, things like that. I mean, that's typically what you see within an MMO or RPG style game, but you don't necessarily have to have that. You're all flying ships, right? So, you know, might makes right. If you have more ships, you're probably going to win. So it's all about organization, unity, things like that. Within a typical MMO, though, you have to have tanks, you have to have healers, you have to have, DPS classes or damaging classes to be able to make up a decent group. And that's typically where a lot of these games will fall apart, because you're absolutely right. If you play Star Wars, you want to be a Jedi, which means you're going to be, a damaging Jedi or tank Jedi, but people don't want to be healers or whatever. They want to be whatever the awesome thing is. And I have that feeling. So getting back into like DC Online, one of the things is that you're not going to be playing Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman in this game, right? It's similar, because that's not how the game is set up. You're not playing those characters. You create a superhero. So you're going to create your own superhero with your own set of powers. So you're not going to be playing. Yeah,
so it's like City of Heroes kind of thing?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's already kind of misleading.
Well, this trailer, I'm watching it right now. I actually completely phased out during SDCC, but this trailer is completely misleading.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's what I was getting to, is this trailer tells you nothing about what the gameplay is like. It sets up the story, maybe, because I'm sure you're going to interact with Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman as you're moving the story part along. But no, you're making your own hero. You make your own superhero persona, and they're going to be going through the city and leveling up and doing missions or whatever. So, and that's kind of my thing. It's like, we already have City of Heroes. So, if you're playing City of Heroes, unless you just desperately want to play within the DC universe, and yet play nondescript characters and interact, which is why Star Wars failed, right? It's the same thing. It's like, it's like, okay, yep, there's Darth Vader, yep, I'm on Tatooine, whatever. Who cares? When I played Galaxies, well, there's a couple of reasons that game failed. One of the reasons it failed is mechanically it was very poorly designed as far as the interface, which will kill a game. Because if you get into the game and you don't know how to play it right away, it's going to turn people off, which was part of what killed Galaxies. Then they threw away the thing that actually made Galaxies interesting when they fixed the interface and turned it into something boring. But that's beside the point.
What was that? What was that?
Well, okay. When you're playing Galaxies, one of the things that made it unique is it was a skill-based system. So what that means is that when you're playing the game, it's all about leveling up your individual skill. So you didn't have classes. You would skill up in whatever it is that you wanted to do. So the way the original game was set up, you could play like I was building a droid crafter. Like that's what my character was going to be. I was going to mine for parts or trade and sell for parts, build droids and sell droids as my character class. And you could do that. The way the game mechanics was set up, you could do that. So it was very out of the box. It was very interesting as far as what you could do. The problem is that the way they designed the interface, it was too complicated to figure out how to do that. It took hours and hours of playing before you could figure out how the controls worked, how you were supposed to mine, what you needed in order to make certain things. All of the training was between players. So if I knew how to use a blaster, I could train someone else how to use a blaster. But as far as where to get that skill originally, it was just very confusing. So when they went to fix the game and fix the interface, instead of just making the interface easier to use and keeping the skill system, they threw that out and they implemented a typical leveling system and said, okay, you have to be an engineer class, you have to be a Jedi class, you have to be whatever class. So you had to actually pick your class and level up. And so now they're going to try again. They've got Star Wars Old Republic coming out, which BioWare is designing. And typically the RPGs that BioWare has made for Star Wars has been great. So the question is whether or not that's going to translate. I don't know. But getting back to DC Online, the other thing that they're doing is it's going to be available on both PC and on PS3. Which also begs the question, typically with an MMO, you have some sort of fee to play. So typically you'll pay a monthly fee. Well, are you going to have to pay that fee in order to play on the PS3 or not? Because typically those games' online connection has been free. So is the game going to be free and there'll be in-game advertising to cover? So that's kind of the question as far as what the pay model or pay structure is going to be for this game. Are you going to buy it and just be able to play out of the box and not have to pay? Because that could be a huge market share gain. You know, again, with a lot of MMOs, if you have to pay to play, that turns people away.
Right. And again, especially like if DC Online expects to like you said, gain market share or get like new people into this type of gaming, that's going to be difficult. But you know, the trailer and the pay structure, all that kind of stuff may end up being kind of a slap in the face to people new to this type of gaming.
Well, and again, the trick with online and MMOs is not is keeping them in your game. So I have no problem as a World of Warcraft player to, take a month or two and go play DC Online. Even if I'm paying for both for those months or using a free trial or whatever. I don't have a problem doing that. The question is, am I going to be interested enough that I want to continue to play that game after the second or third month versus going back to World of Warcraft where I have high-level characters and that's ready to go. Well, and that's the third point that I'm concerned about the success of this game is that when is it coming out? November? I think it is October or November is launch for this game.
November 2nd.
See, Cataclysm is going to be coming out right about that same time. And if it comes, especially if DC Online comes out before Cataclysm, that is just going to demolish that game. Because what'll happen is the people who are playing World of Warcraft now are bored, right? There's no new content. There hasn't been any new content for several months. So they're going to be more than happy to try DC Universe Online out for a month or two. And then when Cataclysm hits, they will rush out of that game. And their player base will vanish.
I don't know. I feel like DC Online is just trying to tread on something that only DC fans will enjoy. Not all DC fans are MMORPG fans, right?
I know I'm not.
Right. So I feel like the people that would be potentially playing DC Online, if this game came out, 5-10 years ago, before City of Heroes came out, then maybe they would be able to take that. But City of Heroes has been out, and I'm guessing it's relatively successful, right? I mean...
Yeah, they still have a player base. Now, they had to fix that game because when it first came out, it was just City of Heroes. So now it's City of Heroes and City of Villains. So they had to add the villain side in order to give it that balance. And yeah, it's, obviously it's not World of Warcraft, but yeah, those servers are still up. People are still playing for that game, which is part of, that's the thing with an MMO too, is that as long as they want to keep the servers on, there's typically going to be some people playing it.
There's going to be at least 2 people running around.
Yeah, exactly. Dark Age of Camelot hasn't had a new expansion in 5 years, and they still have, probably 5,000 to 10,000 regular players for that. So
I know so little about MMOs that I'm here showing the viewers Transformers and me eating cookies.
You mean bear crackers.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but let's bring it back. Again, DC Universe Online is going to be on PS3, so it's going to have a platform option. As a platform gamer, is it important to you to be able to interact with other players in a sandbox world?
No.
Can you now that you're saying that it's on PS3, can you also interact with people that? So it's only on PS3. Am I getting that correct?
Yes. Right, because it's being released by Sony Station, so it's which
okay.
Sony.
Yeah, I did see that SOE. So
this is not being released on the PC. It's a console only.
No. This is going to be the first game to actually cross-platform. So
no, it's not. Quake 3 on the Dreamcast did.
Okay, well, this is the first MMO to cross-platform. So you're going to be because EverQuest, we talked about this the other day. EverQuest was on PS2, and that was a horrible failure. But that was a contained server. So if you played EverQuest on PS2, you were not interacting with people playing PC. Whereas in this, if you're playing on PS3, you can interact with people that are playing on PC. So those will be. You're going to essentially be able to cross platforms in that sense. But this game is not going to be released on Xbox. It's not going to be on Wii. So you're going to have to either have a PC or have a PS3 in order.
Then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get why they're doing that because they're releasing it through Sony. But
now I'm going to ask you something, JD. You're a big MMO player, so what do you think? Do you think the transition from a PC MMO game will actually work well on a control stick?
I don't know that they're okay. It depends on what you mean, because as far as from a play standpoint, I don't think the play will necessarily be that different. The problem is whether or not you have a keyboard, because that MMO is multiplayer, meaning other people. And you have to have a way to interact with those other people.
Yeah.
So, unless they're building in a voice chat and everybody, you're going to have a headset in order to talk, how are you going to use the control stick and type as you're playing?
Gesture. Phantasy Star Online had a system on the Dreamcast. It was a little ahead of its time.
Of course.
To where people...
Dreamcast was totally ahead of its time.
Yeah. Where people could communicate across different languages because it was all like gesture based. Well, not necessarily just
amazing.
Gesture. Yeah.
I guess what I'm basing this off of is because after StarCraft, hit its big peak thing in the States, they released it on the N64, and it was awful because you did not. I mean, the best part that StarCraft made you successful were those hotkeys. You could run. You could build massive amounts of stuff using these hotkeys in a matter of minutes, and it took you forever on N64 because you're like, okay, I got to move the cursor over to the button, click the button, get over there, start this, got to move it around, and that's what I'm really afraid of is this MMO issue that converts keyboard and will the PC players have? So I guess what I'm posing is, do you think the PC players will have not just a communication piece, but do you think the PC guys will have a better, a one-up over the guys on consoles?
It all comes down to design, right? So that's going to be the question, is how they design the mechanics of the game. Typically, and I'm all for them thinking outside the box, because that's something that has not happened. There has not been a lot of innovation within the MMO control set. Typically, when you're playing your avatar within a PC, you have spells or abilities. You bind those to your number pad. So you have so on. That's where you put your spells and abilities. You'll move your character typically using your mouse or your arrow keys, and you might have a few other quick keys like for camera controls or things as a part of the keyboard. So I don't see any problem with controlling your character using the PlayStation controller, at least as far as moving it around and moving within the world. The question becomes, how are you going to control your special abilities? And if they're going to limit you to the number of special abilities you have, like, say, 4 or whatever, then... if...
You're right over there.
This is too hot to handle, this topic.
That was a little joke. If you had the video, it was funny. Anyway, but it depends on how it depends on how they lay out the controls. If they're going to limit you to 4 spells or 4 sets, and then you can map it to the controls, then I don't think there's any difference. But I think your point is valid in that, it may put the PS3 gamers at a disadvantage compared to what you can do on the PC. I think definitely the communication part is going to be the hard part. I don't know how they're going to get over that, because they're almost going to force... the way I'd see it, they'd almost be forcing the PS3 players to have some kind of keyboard in order to be able to at least type. Yeah, but that's the other thing, is that TeamSpeak or Ventrilo are so big within the MMO world. Like, if you're in a guild, they typically are going to have either a TeamSpeak or event channel, which is very, very hard to discuss. It's lower end, so it doesn't take up as much bandwidth, and that's what you use to communicate talking. Well, you're not going to be able to do that on PS3. So you're going to have like PC only guilds.
You don't think they could bridge that gap by putting like a TeamSpeak server on?
I'll tell you right now, World of Warcraft has an in-game voice chat client. Mm-hmm. So there's a client in game,
and nobody uses it. I bet.
And nobody uses it.
I'm saying, put a bridge on there and put TeamSpeak or Ventrilo on the console. I mean, it's just you're just hitting a server. That's all it is.
Yeah, but there's I don't know that there's a way that Sony is going to allow that just for one game, that they're going to allow the back-end tech, because when you go into game on PS3, it turns off your background stuff. So it locks out your downloads and everything else. So there's no way, I don't think, to get it to multitask in that way where you would have a TeamSpeak or event server up in the software. I mean, come on, like, they're just now getting the Netflix up and running so that you have the software and not the disc. So I don't see it happening. I don't see Sony doing that for the PS3 just so you can run a talk channel.
Hey, JD.
Yeah.
You know what I see happening?
Fail.
The end of this week's show.
Sorry. JD talks too much.
It was great. It was great. You know, this is the kind of topic that can go on forever and ever, and that's the kind of topics that we love around here on New Soundwave.
And look at it this way, too. It makes up for the last, 2 or 3 weeks where you barely said a word or were not even on the show, JD.
I know. It's like, can you tell the difference? Yes. Was JD on the show, or was he just not talking?
JD just comes running into the house with a baseball bat and just demolishes everything with his MMO goodness. That's what we all want.
He is the expert.
We love a JD rampage every now and then.
Oh, yeah.
These expert insight topics are actually are quite entertaining. I mean,
yes.
It's a window to the world that I don't know of, and it's and
I like JD knows it. Oh God, does he know it?
Yes. He's a man who knows his MMORPGs.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, for everybody here, that is New Soundwave for this week. By the way, always check out our other shows on the TF Radio network that were so lovingly built by Brian Kilby, the one and only, and XB, and me, and JD, and Rob, and Weebum, and everybody, our cast of thousands. Go to tfradio.net, will you please, and peruse RFC, New Soundwave, Superhero Time, Fanboy versus Outside the Cage, and RFC Throwback, made with real sugar. So again,
and soon to be real media. So.
Oh, really? Ooh, made with real content too, people.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is John DeLuna.
Yeah, it's 98 again. Hey, it's Brian
For
Gilby
the
too.
guys. Brian, calm down.
Sorry. Jacked up on sugar. Real
Jacked up on Mountain Dew, my man.
Anyway, for the guys, I'm John. We are out. See you next week.
Kiss my ass.
All those Bear Grams, Gilby.